This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
We're talking with retired FBI Special Agent and Hidden Killers contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer about the current state in the case against Bryan Kohberger. Curious to get your take. Kohberger's lawyer filed that objection because they're seeking a detailed breakdown of how genetic genealogy was used to help the FBI initially identify Kohberger as a person of interest, and their stay on that is going to be up very shortly on the 1st of August, that 37-day period. One of the things that stood out to me was something that I don't believe I remember seeing earlier. I could be remiss. There's been a lot of information here, but they really pointed out the DNA from 3 men were found at the murder scene. My initial reaction to that was, well, it's a college house. Where was the DNA found? I would guess there's maybe DNA, if you look at everything in that house, from probably 50 to 100 different men. If you identify everything in that home where DNA is. But with a statement like that, are they saying that DNA was found in random places, or would that be in key places in relation to the murder of 3 different men?
Well, Tony, these motions that have been filed most recently by the defense are really kind of offensive to me personally. Yeah. For instance, they wrote words like placed. I think at least in 2 places, the glove was placed, because that makes somebody feel like, if you're reading that, you're really indicating that it was planted. Yeah. And that's really, I think, is an unfair assessment to even use the word place. They could have said found. Yeah. They could have been nebulous about it, but anyway, and I found the same to be true, analogous to the fact that they are talking about this DNA in this way. So first of all, there's only 2 samples that are inside the house. Mm-hmm. You know why that's remarkable? I'm shocked there's not way more. Yes. Because when you consider all the people that have been in this house, and recall, not just since the girls lived there, but we can look at those videotapes, right, of the parties where they didn't even attend. Yeah. And law enforcement has to go out and get DNA samples from every or fraternity member, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that was in that house, so that they can exclude them. They also need to get samples, of course, from every EMT, emergency worker, all the police, crime scene, everyone, because sometimes, we don't know how well guarded the initial responders were in terms of not leaving DNA behind. This was a monumental task. It really was, just to collect the comparison DNAs. The third DNA that is referred to is on a glove. Yeah. And this glove was recovered, I believe, November 20th, a week later. Not the Chris glove, because Chris McDonough found a glove on the 28th. And if you look at that glove he found, that's what a garbage collector wears, right? They're the big, gigantic, warm gloves, not what you would wear like a nitrile or nitrite glove that Bryan Kohberger had in his possession, and that would be a normal type of glove to wear when committing, because you want to feel. You can't have these big, bulky gloves. So let's be clear that this was found a week after the murders, when the crime scene had already been done. So could have been left by anybody walking by. Well, when you're talking about a glove that's on the edge of the property. Well, and we're also, it needs to be remembered that this was the middle of winter as well. And for those of us who live in cold climates and have ever taken a walk in winter down a sidewalk, you'll probably find a couple hats and gloves everywhere because people just tend to drop them. So it doesn't necessarily really stand out to me that it's found way outside the property a week later. Unless you have Kohberger's DNA on it or someone that it would be a person of interest, it seems to be kind of a nothing. I think it is a nothing. I know they haven't come out with it, and they said 3 unidentified. Believe me, nobody's working harder than them trying to get that identified, that person that maybe wouldn't give their DNA, and they had to get a search warrant for it, or perhaps an individual that they just didn't even know was there. Because they've got all these college kids going out. And the only way to figure out who was really there, right, is you talk to the first one. Well, what friends were with you? And then you talk to those friends and it proliferates out. But you can see just in this discussion how many people were there and how difficult it is going to be to get that DNA to compare against what was found. But how relevant is it? Was it on the, hand faucet in the bathroom? Was it on the kitchen table? Or was it on Maddie Mogan?
Yeah.
So I think we can deduce by the fact it wasn't disclosed where it was. It was very general. Just imagine if there was another DNA sample from on the bed. The defense would have loved to have shouted that out and got that in public document.
Sure. It almost, and tell me what you feel about this. It feels like it's kind of a political campaign at this point with the defense. They're focusing on Moscow, Idaho. Obviously, the rest of us hear it as well. But it feels like they're trying to throw some of these things out there in a very campaign-like way to the potential jurors that could be picked for this and trying to induce some sort of doubt, if you will, as this continues to drag out and as we get closer and closer to a trial date.
Well, that's how I see it. And in a way, I understand. The prosecution has been able to put the affidavit out, which is so damning. And so these motions are a way for them not to go against the gag order, but for them to get a few nuggets, trying to pepper some, reasonable doubt in the picture. But I don't think it's going to amount to much, Tony. I really don't.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.